Joining us again, Seamus O'Regan, Nathan Cullen, Lisa Raitt, and Gilles Duceppe. You were talking a little bit about the economy. So there was Axe the Tax and Axe Justin Trudeau, and both were axed. Pierre Poilievre can take a lot of credit for all of that. Yep. But suddenly was he left with nothing to grasp onto in this campaign?
I don't know. Being at 39% for a Conservative feels pretty good.
Remember the old days, Lisa, where that was majority government?
That's a majority in the real world. Right now, unfortunately, because of the collapse of the NDP, it's 39 isn't what's going to necessarily bring you to the promised land of a majority government. So we're fighting for every point between us and the Liberals. Like I said, I don't concede the election yet because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. From the economy point of view, though, to answer your question, I think Pierre's always hit on, I think, the things that are really worrisome for Canadians, especially young Canadians, and he has found a following as a result. People are voting for us that I had not anticipated.
Has Mr. Carney kind of tried to avoid everything else because he wanted to keep it on the subject that you say is the most important, but then has stayed stuck only to that point?
No, he put out a fully formed, broadly based platform that he would have put out in any other election, but I think he's coming back to what Canadians have gravitated to. Let's be frank. This is not where we thought we would be only a few months ago. This is a government that has been in for 10 years. But Canadians are coming around and gathering around Mark Carney because they believe he is the leader and the person to take on Donald Trump and affordability issues. There's no question about it. The change in leadership made a huge difference.
And he's not Justin Trudeau.
Fair enough. And did that hurt you then?
I don't know. Well, I think there was an acknowledgement by the NDP this week that in working with the Liberals may have had a negative effect. In the sense of, which is strange, and I would lament this a bit in politics, is because the reason the NDP spent time working with the Liberals was to get some things done. And we all heard as parliamentarians, why can't Parliament work better? Why don't you guys work better together? Get things done, stop with this. There's unfortunate, looks like reality of doing those things sometimes has a consequence, a negative consequence when you think it would be positive in terms of bringing healthcare, expanding it, working with other parties to get things done. I'm not ready for predictions yet, but there is a possibility, I think a real possibility, to Lisa's point about concession, of a minority parliament. If it were a minority Liberal or Conservative parliament, what happens next is going to be fascinating, because where do you draw support from?
Gilles, you could have the balance of power.
I don't know if we will have the balance of power, but I think Carney was very lucky to have a very short campaign, because we don't really know who Mark Carney is. When you look at what he said before, he said he helped Paul Martin for the financial problem we had. That was in 1995. He came in Martin's cabinet in 2005. So that was not true. Last year, Brookfield made $541 million of profit and pay not a single penny of income. He didn't want to make public his income revenue like the other leaders. He said he was the spokesman for the climate for the United Nations. That's true. At the same time, he deforested 9,000 hectares of forests in Brazil, in the Amazon forest, and in hand with Bolsonaro. This is not...
No, fair enough.
It's quite surprising for someone saying environment is important.
But back in Canada, I just want to get back to this country for a second, which is, you were addressing this when we talked earlier, which is the polarized nature of what we might find ourselves with after this election.
So let's say that it's a Conservative government. Clearly, he's not going to win all across the country, so he'll have to pivot to those places where we didn't win, maybe the Maritimes, Newfoundland, Quebec, Ontario. But if it's a Carney government, he's going to have to pivot to the West, and he's going to have to show the West that he's governing for all as well. And that's going to be, I think, the first 100 days of any government is going to be extremely important, because they're going to have to pull everyone together and come forward with a path that's going to work. Because if not, my God, the buyer's remorse that will happen in this country by the voter will be extreme.
Yeah, I think that, if the Liberals take government, and I expect that they will, the story will be whether it's minority or majority. Now, that's not something that I thought I would say on this panel when I signed up for this panel, but here we are. I think Lisa's absolutely right. I think that I don't think there's going to be much of a honeymoon. I think that Canadians have settled on the fact that he has an exemplary resume that is tailor-made for the moment, and the tone that he is hitting, a somber tone that is demanding that Canadians rise to a challenge, is one that is resonating with Canadians. That is the only thing to explain how we have gone from the Conservatives having a sustained 20 to 25 point lead over 2 years to us being in the position where we are.
And Trudeau.
You said it right. The double combo, particularly cost of living, carbon tax attacks and whatnot, and Mr. Trudeau.
Yep.
You wrap a little Trump around that, and now you have a completely different scenario for the party's.
No such thing as a little Trump, but
well, yeah, I was trying to be
issue.
kind. I'm trying to be kind. What's next is what's curious for me is actually a question of ambition. Yeah. What ambition does Mr. Carney have? I mean, a campaign is a campaign. You say these things, you hope for these things. It can't all be response to Trump, because then we're in a very reactionary state. And that guy just says a lot of things, and he says a lot of different things. So if you're in a constant reactive mode, I don't think talk about honeymoon, that's not going to last at all for Canadians who are saying, what's our plan? And I think diversification of trade, inter-provincial trade. There's been some initial moves that way that I think could be positive.
Indeed.
But to Lisa's point, how does a prime minister, depending on their mandate, depending on where they get their votes from, actually sync people together, not just with the threat of a Donald Trump?
You will also have to give an answer to a unanimous demand of the National Assembly in Quebec, because we'll be paying $800 million for the tax, the tax which is eliminated now. But Canadians will receive a lot of money in advance for a tax they won't pay, and we'll be paying $800 million for that when we have our own system. So unanimously, the National Assembly is asking, give back that money to Quebec, because we don't have to pay for a tax we never had.
He'll be hitting the ground running if he wins.
Our provinces are the most trade exposed in the country, Ontario and Quebec. So whoever is the government, they're going to have to deal with Ontario and Quebec.
Well,
and find
U.S. trade exposed.
U.S. trade exposed.
And find a balance for the rest of the country, because Western Canada is going to be watching very closely how that's being treated.
Isn't that going to be an interesting moment?
We've run out of time for this. Thanks so much to all of you for joining us. We'll be back in a moment.